Say the Semantics, episode 260. It is June 11th, 2024. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. It's been a little bit since I've last posted. I think like a couple weeks now. I also recognize that for some reason, I don't know why. I just want to acknowledge, I don't know why, but like it's not getting the podcasting site that I use, which is called Podbean. I am able to record and post on there, and in the past, or what's usually been the case, I've been able to have that automatically post onto YouTube, but for some reason it's not. It's kind of stopped doing that, so I have to figure that out. I don't really know what's going on there. Also, I have to apologize for my voice, and I'll probably be pausing a bit because I have a cough that I got while traveling back. So I'm sort of recovering from that. I mean, I still kind of have like a bad cough, but it's I'll be all right. It's just been, travel sickness and all that stuff. So yeah, I actually recorded something while in Brazil last week, but I wasn't a fan of how it turned out, so I just was, I was rambling more than I typically was, which is saying something, and I just wasn't really, it felt a little incoherent, which, it's just like, well, is that really that different from what it usually is? Well, yeah, no, maybe not, but I just didn't like how it was, so I've passed up on posting it, and I'm just gonna post this, and again I'm gonna figure out how to do the YouTube thing, because there's some episodes that I've if you look at my YouTube page, there's just some like episodes that are like missing. It just like jumps forward and in time and stuff, so I'm gonna try to figure that out if I can. Anyways, I'm back home now. I've been back home for a few days, and for the most part, I'd say I've adjusted back. I've kind of gotten back into my typical routine, and I've sort of kind of waved off the jet lag for the most part, and I feel okay. Other than this cough that I have and the sore throat that I have, I honestly feel pretty good. It helps that I came back to some really nice weather that we've had so far this week, and I've really been able to enjoy that. And yeah, I don't know. I've been it's been nice. Like it's good to be back. That was the longest time that I had been out of the country for a month and like a week, so five weeks total, more or less. I mean, it's more, I guess it's more, maybe just like a month in total. But yeah, that's the longest time that I've been out. Traveling is a lot for sure. Being out of the country is a lot, and being just kind of away from your typical setting is quite a bit. I think there were a lot of, I'll give sort of like a brief summary of how overall of how I felt and just the trip in general, and I think it was an incredible experience. I'm grateful that I was just, that I was able to kind of make it happen, and I feel like it's been one of the more highlights. Just, it's been definitely one of the highlights of the past couple of years, honestly. I mean, it's hard to really pick, and it's really hard to like pick any other kind of event that's kind of happened in recent memory that's sort of gotten to this level, but I mean, just like being able to have a space completely elsewhere and try to learn the language and everything like that is different. It's a completely different experience, and it's something that I really, I think I'm just gonna look back on that time fondly. I mean, it's only been a few days, but I've kind of already started to sort of reminisce on things, just looking back at the dates and everything like that. And it's it definitely felt like the time that I spent there. Like, it definitely felt like a month while I was there. But when I've come back, I've also have felt like, I was like, damn, I was really out of the country for a month. It's just like, I how much has changed. It's hard to tell. I'm sort of like, it's like I'm like disoriented a little bit. But it was one of the more memorable experiences that I've had in kind of my adult life so far. And there's a lot of things that I've talked about it while when I did record my, how many times did I record? Like two times maybe, or maybe just like the one time. But I talked about kind of like the things that I can kind of bring back in terms of just like the habits and whatnot. And I think there's some things that I can really kind of, some good things that I think that I can try to introduce into my day-to-day in terms of just like my habits and whatnot. I mean, really main thing is just like being more social. I think being more in the presence of other people is going to be important. And I'm going to try my best to find ways to put myself in those kinds of situations more. I really think it was like, it's obvious when you really think about it. And it's obvious when you just sort of, I don't know. It's a very surface level observation, but I think that being around people, is very important. And I think that I have tried my best to, well, maybe not the, I haven't put in the most effort necessarily, but I can definitely do more to be just present in social activities and whatnot, because I feel I had gone such a long period of time without having consistent interactions that it was like a month, man. It was like a month of just like constantly talking to people, and that's just not something that I've had really because of my circumstance of working remote and everything like that. So it's I know it's taken me a minute, but it's something that I've already known, but I think that this kind of experience sort of further prove the point that I think that I should try my best to be a part of things and do more and be just be more active socially and that sort of thing, because I think that's important, and having sort of like a presence in some sense and some activity, whatever that might be, whether it's through work or other things, just trying my best to do that with the time that I do have outside of work and that sort of thing. Anyways, it was a really great experience, and I'm also happy to be back. There are things to catch up on, but I'm also like there's things that have happened. One, the NBA finals are happening, but I just am not invested at all because I don't care about either team, Celtics or the Mavericks. I just have no interest in either team winning. Whoever wins, congratulations. But I'm kind of in I'm like in off-season mode, honestly. I'm like looking forward to The Olympics, I'm looking forward to like the Warriors off season and seeing what they do, and the changes that they make. That's kind of where my headspace is at. It's gonna be. I think the summer is gonna be shorter than it feels like because we do have the Olympics, and it's gonna be. I don't know. I think we're gonna have. I think we're gonna have. It's gonna be interesting to see, like I mentioned before, how the roster shakes up, what changes Dunleavy's gonna make. If he's going to go in the direction of really wanting to take advantage of the time that we still have with Steph and everything. Those are questions that are going to continue to sort of be a part of the conversation as the off season, really starts off. So that's something that I'm going to be kind of keeping my eye on. That's kind of, that's sort of the front on NBA stuff. I honestly hadn't been really watching too much. Like, I really did not watch any of, like, the conference finals or anything like that. I was really, I was really kind of busy, and I felt that I was really, at that sort of time, I was like, just really living and kind of doing the, kind of working abroad sort of situation, and taking advantage of that. And it was like, it's funny because like before this trip I was like, oh, like it's so stupid to even like think about it in retrospect, but I was like thinking like, oh man, I'm not going to be able to watch the finals, and now I just don't care at all. And I didn't really care too much either when I was missing games, and I think I sort of found other things to place some more importance on. So I'm happy with how things turned out, but it is sort of funny looking back on things. As I mentioned before, one of the things that I have missed is video games. That's a big thing. That's a big thing that I'm really looking forward to kind of getting back into. And I kind of already have. Last night I beat Baten Kaitos. As I sort of talked about before, I was really trying and looking to complete the game. I feel that I was sort of reaching the end, and I was ready to move on to another game. So I sort of, maybe it's whatever. Maybe players might be like, that's sacrilege, but I decided to employ the use of just like the quality of life things, turning encounters off, really, and turning the speed up and all that stuff, really honing in on completing the story and focusing on that as opposed to really anything else. And I'm happy with the way that I took it. I think that if I did sort of play the game straight up as it sort of should have in the original style of the game, I think it would have taken a very long time. And I'm happy with how I approached it, and I feel that I got the same enjoyment out of it even if I did just sort of play it normally. Because really the main draw for me for this game in particular was the story, and I was interested in seeing how it panned out, and I was happy. I was happy with the conclusion of the game. I think that there were sort of like interesting twists and turns even at the end of the game. What I found interesting in the terms of the storytelling was they really sort of like backloaded all of the kind of reveals of how things turned out the way they did, and character motivations and just sort of further explanations and stuff really at the tail end, like even after you beat the final boss, is when they kind of reveal the relationships and why your character turned out the way they did, and sort of how the story began. Like we get kind of reveals to all of that, and that really sort of ties everything together. There's like a few things. There's one thing in the story that I was not a fan of. That at the end of the game, that I was just sort of like, this feels just like a weird shoehorn in, kind of like almost like a joke moment, but it was played straight, and I wasn't really a fan of that. I felt that it took away from the emotional weight of kind of the that sort of one of the final moments of the game, but luckily they sort of tied it back together in a decent way. I overall I'm happy I played through this game. I think that it's hard for me to like. I think if you're like a Monolith Soft fan, you should. I'd recommend checking this out. There's a lot of elements that are sort of you'll see kind of in similar, in Xenoblade and maybe some of the other Xeno games. There are a lot of JRPG tropes that you'll probably be familiar with if you are a fan of the genre. But I think there are some very interesting thematic pieces that you can kind of take away in terms of just the concept of the cycle of destruction and creation, and how the people who exist within the world choose to adapt to the conditions that are in place. I think that I was recently watching it was a Zelda video. It was like a Zelda related video. Today actually I was like sort of listening to it while working, and a common sort of narrative plot, storytelling kind of device or element, I don't know how exactly to call it, in Zelda games, is the way in which people deal with conflict. I believe it was in A Link Between Worlds? No, it was... Which one was it? I forgot which one exactly it was, but there's, in one of the games, I forgot which one exactly it was. It doesn't really matter too much. Zelda games are not very deep, quote unquote deep necessarily, but I think there's a lot of elements and a lot of storytelling things that you can really take away. And one of the games there was this sort of era of conflict and war, and the people decided that they were going to destroy the Triforce, basically, because they felt that this in doing so, it sort of resulted in a sort of like a temporary peace, but it was the foundation of their land and their culture, and this sort of resulted in further, issues later down the road, right? And that was like one element where it's like all of a very easy trope or common device or element. I can't think of the word, but just a common thing that you'll see throughout Zelda games is the concept of imprisoning the evil, or sort of sealing away the evil, right? It's essentially putting, and it for the majority of the games, that sort of is like the conclusion, right? It's like, oh, you sealed away the evil until, further down the road, right? It's and then, kind of the cycle continues in a later game, but that is sort of like a thing that is like one solution to an issue that people employ, is that they can't fully defeat, or they can't fully erase something like Ganondorf. So the decision is to seal them away so that it's like, okay, we're sort of leaving this for future generations to deal in later on. It is these are sort of temporary solutions that may, give us a sense of peace and an era of peace, but later down the road it is something that will have to be dealt, right? In Baten Kaitos, there is sort of like a concept like that exists, where you have, these mythical figures, or these sort of like ancestral figures from the past that kind of plan for the future, but also do so in a way that kind of benefits them, if that makes sense at all. It's really interesting, and then just the way in which their actions physically shape the world, I think, is really fascinating as well. And just kind of how it, like, literally and figuratively sort of manifests itself, I think is really fascinating. There's, sort of the main villain. It's sort of, it's really upfront about what the villain is. It's like this villain is like a god of destruction, and his existence is sort of to destroy, and it's like the harbinger of death and all that stuff, right? But his existence sort of predicates on the existence of the other, right? Which is sort of like the not like a god of light, but sort of the opposing element of light. So within that kind of exists, this battle as well. The concept of light and darkness is probably one of the most, like, it's like the most told story ever. But I do like how it's sort of complemented in Baten Kaitos, and how it's sort of portrayed, and how certain motivations of characters are given, and why they decide to act upon, why they decide to act in certain ways, and why they are the way they are. I think it does a good job of, giving kind of the main concept of what this world is, and everything like that. I really enjoyed it. This if you have played Xenoblade 2 in particular, I think that there are a lot of elements of it, including kind of the ending sequence. I don't want to give too much away if you want to play Baten Kaitos, that feel very akin to Xenoblade 2. So I if you like that game, and you like some elements of kind of how the world building, I think you might enjoy this one as well. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I do have the second game as well, because the remake, or whatever you want to call this, what is it called? The remaster of this game, or the collection that I have includes both the first game and the second game. I think I'll probably play. We'll see if I play the second game anytime soon. That's probably going to be later down the line. But there's another JRPG on the backlog right there, and reading up kind of on some brief discussions on the series, and which games people prefer. It seems like there's kind of a even split. I think there's maybe more favorability towards the first game, because it is the first game, and people hold a lot of weight towards that. And for some people, it kind of, there's kind of a nostalgia factor to it. But I've seen a lot of people talking about the second game, and how there's even more interesting story twists and turns, and whatnot, and they like the characters more. So that's cool to hear. And also that the combat is more, refurbished and improved. So that that seems cool, and I'm excited for that. I think the main drawback for this game, I mean, there's a few that I've already sort of talked about previously, but I wanted to enjoy the combat a little bit more because I was like, ooh, card based combat, and I've been a sucker for cards and card games recently, right, dude? Like Balatro and Slay the Spire. But unfortunately, like the combat really didn't click too much with me. I just didn't really enjoy. I didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to. It didn't really feel. I'm sure there are ways to, if you do pull off certain combos, you'll be able to obtain certain items and that sort of thing, and then use that in battle later. But I just didn't have the patience to learn all of that and all the nuances. So I just couldn't. I just didn't really delve too much deeper than kind of the surface level of, stringing the most, the highest attack cards and pulling together the highest defense cards in order to thwart the enemy's attack and that sort of thing. So I didn't go too much further than that. Again, maybe the second game has improved qualities, and that might convince me to delve a bit further and maybe enjoy the combat system more. But regardless, I enjoyed Baten Kaitos, and I'm glad I picked it up. And now I am moving forward. I have decided on which game I'm going to play. And it's really funny because I was but I have been talking about how, I'm going to hold off on buying new games because I feel like I've been buying a lot of games kind of in the past year that I haven't really played. But I really felt drawn to pick up and play Outer Wilds, which I just purchased today. It was on sale on the eShop, and I am really looking forward to it. I've heard so many good things about this game, so many things about going into this game blind and not having, really too many expectations going into it. And I feel, based on kind of my surface level understanding, that this game is like right up, it's not, I don't believe it's a super long game from my understanding. And a very, I think that sort of the kind of based on discussions and, brief chatter, because I haven't really delved too much deeper into discussion and just in lieu of spoilers, but it seems that there's a lot of really interesting themes discussed within its story, and that is my shit. That's my shit, man. I kind of got a little bit of that with Baten Kaitos. I feel that I really had some, I got a nice supply of that with kind of a, JRPG flair, and I'm hoping that I'm looking forward to kind of more of that in something completely different. I've seen footage and I've seen like trailers and gameplay, but I know that it takes sort of place in space. But outside of that, I really don't know what to expect. And that's really exciting. And my plan is to start playing that tonight. And that's going to be something that I will be looking forward to talking about, kind of moving forward as I progress through the game and as I complete the game. I really feel, it seems like there's a lot of things to take away from this game, and I'm looking forward to it. It seems really cool. And I think this will be sort of like, I've really, I don't know. There's certain games where I just feel drawn, and I feel that I can kind of justify an almost impulse buy. I mean, I've been thinking of playing this game, but I just kind of went on a whim and decided to purchase it. So here we go. Looking forward to kind of talking about that. And there's so many other games that I still have that I've yet to complete, including I was thinking I was picking back up on Ace Attorney, the third game, since I hadn't completed that yet. So that might be kind of later. That might be a game that I play later. And then also Final Fantasy X, which I bought earlier this year, but I haven't had a chance to play it all because, Kaidos and Balatro and all these other games. So that might be a game that I play later this year. So many. Oh yeah, one more thing. Next week, apparently, sort of based on chatter, based on leaks and rumors and whatnot, is the expected time for there to be a June Nintendo Direct. And I don't really know what to expect, but I'm hoping that it's good. I'm hoping that it'll be interesting. It's so funny. Like I've said this before, but I really don't have a ton of intention of like playing brand new games anytime soon because I just have so many games that I have lined up left to play. But I'm just excited to hear games being announced and talked about and whatnot. And so I'm like really itching, and as many other people are currently. I'm just really itching for some new announcements for games, because it's been a bit, and I'm hoping that there's some good ones that pop up for this direct, this kind of like swan song for the Switch, right? I mean, games are still going to be released for the Switch, obviously, but you know, as the kind of this year continues and as we move into 2025, obviously the focus is going to move towards the Switch too. So I'm really interested in seeing how, you know, what they announce and kind of how they handle what kind of the direction is going to be for the rest of the year. Are they going to announce more remakes and kind of remasters and that sort of thing? That's maybe kind of the safe bet, really, just kind of based on last year and this past year and what they released. But that remains to be seen. And I'm just really excited to see kind of what pops up. Hopefully next week. I'm hoping that it's next week because that'll be nice. Anyways, I'm gonna catch up later this weekend on Outer Wilds and some other stuff. And I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna make some tea because I was just coughing for a bit right there. I'm gonna make some tea. I'm gonna try to get this cough under order, and I'm gonna catch up. I'm gonna catch up later this weekend, so stay tuned for that. Alright, recording this on Saturday, June 15th, 2024. The weekend catch up. You know, I feel like I should just label these, you know, as like as the two-parter. And then the first one is the week, and then this is the weekend catch up. I think that's pretty, I don't know, that's pretty revolutionary. It's pretty sick if you really think about it, you know. It's like, oh, so there's something different about this one. Yeah, no, this is the weekend edition of the Save the Semantics podcast. I probably sound a little congested because I still am. Dude, I don't know what the fuck this cough is, man. Like, I've had this thing for a week now. And it's like travel sickness. It's not COVID, because I tested. It's not COVID. It doesn't feel like COVID. It just feels like this weird, general kind of cold sickness. But I've had this kind of thing at the back of my throat for a minute now, and it's annoying. It's very frustrating. But I feel better than I did earlier this week, but I'm still not 100% yet. And I got things that I gotta do next week, so I'm hoping that I clear up by then. I'm hoping by the beginning of this next week, I feel better. because I'm over it. I don't want to. I've been. This is the most times that I've been sick in like over the course of like a month or 2 months. Because when I was in Buenos Aires, Argentina, I got sick for almost a week, and then now I'm sick again, and it's annoying. So get me off this ride. Get me off this freaking ride. Anyways, little weekend kind of catch up. More rather, I want to talk about some stuff that I'm anticipating going into next week, that I didn't when I recorded earlier this week. This past week's sort of it's been quiet in terms of just things that have happened and everything like that. So it's been, yeah, not a whole lot to report on that front, but as I mentioned before, we are anticipating a Nintendo Direct coming up pretty soon. Coming up, most likely. It hasn't been announced yet, but it seems that where there's smoke, there's fire. It seems like it's going to land on the 18th, so next Tuesday, or this upcoming Tuesday. It seems like that's when the Direct is going to happen, which is exciting. I'm leaning towards what other people are saying in terms of what we could expect in terms of what games are going to be announced. I think that because of this transition going into a new generation, a new console, with this potential, release of Switch 2 next year, the games that are going to be announced may not be to the same caliber as it has been in like previous directs or whatever. But I still think there could be some good stuff that comes out, and I'm excited. When it comes to these things, I want to keep my expectations sort of tempered, because I don't have, it's funny looking at it this way, because as I've mentioned before, these games that get announced are not games that I'm probably going to be playing anytime soon, right? More likely than not, I will be maybe playing some of them much later down the line. There are some games where, of course, like Xenoblade and exceptions, Zelda, exceptions like that, where it's like a day one purchase for me once it gets released. But I think that more often than not, I'm not picking up majority of the games that get announced. So and for the games that I do want to play, I'm not going to be playing them anytime soon. So that is kind of the mindset that I'm in. But it is funny just looking at it that I still have this sort of want to sort of temper expectations, despite knowing that it will likely not impact my wallet or my game library. You know what I mean? I'm reiterating this. It's just nice to look forward to something, and it's fun to be excited with other people. It's good to see other people excited for things that I may not be, and maybe that kind of piques my interest. So there's a lot to sort of consider, and a lot to think about. And I when it comes to these sort of presentations and whatnot, I think there's I don't know, you can get some stuff out of it. I mean, overall, these are just giant ass commercials, right? And you're sort of buying into them, but it doesn't mean you can't get some enjoyment out of it. So in terms of what I kind of expect, maybe what I'm sort of guessing will get announced at this upcoming Direct, I do feel like I'm kind of leaning back on what I said earlier in the past in regards to, remakes and remasters being kind of the focal point of what they release, just because it's easy and those games are available, right? I think that the one that really kind of sticks out to me, because I've heard it being rumored so heavily over the last couple of years, is Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War, which is originally, I believe, a Game Boy Advance release, right? If I'm not mistaken. Um, so one of the earlier Fire Emblem games that has been rumored to have been remade. I think that would be awesome. I think that would be really dope. I'm one of those people that got into this series through Awakening. Like many other people, I felt it was the first time that I really sort of ventured into kind of tactical RPGs. That was really sort of my first introduction to that game, and that game was my introduction to kind of that style, that genre, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really I I enjoyed it so much so that I was so anticipating and so excited for the follow up, this, not the sequel, but the following release, which was Fates, and uh, it did not live up to expectations, but I still enjoyed it. I think that my enjoyment of Awakening was so good, and I was just like, oh, I've kind of was just like bought into Fire Emblem as a series, that I was so invested in the idea of Fates, and I only got Birthright, and it was only until recently, before the eShop closed, that I decided to buy both Conquest and Revelations, just so I kind of have that. I don't know if I don't know if I'm gonna play those anytime soon, but again, if I ever run out of games, I'll have those ones as backup. But I only played through Birthright, and while I did enjoy it, while I think I did enjoy quite a lot of aspects of the game, including, like the actual gameplay itself, I think was fine, and I think the music is phenomenal. I think that's like probably one of the biggest highlights of that particular game or series of games. But it just did not. I think the story, I think some of the character interactions, those things didn't really live up to the same level as Awakening. So, I, regardless of that, I've been a fan of the series. Three Houses, I thoroughly enjoyed. I still haven't done the other two routes. I've only done the Golden Deer route. It's one of those things where I don't know if I'll be experiencing those other 2-3 routes. You know what I mean? I just, it's a little hard to run through some of the same sequences over and over again, and I think that I've said this probably before, but I think the calendar, or like kind of the routine of the game, where every day you have to kind of do these little tasks, very similar to Persona 5. It's not my favorite gameplay loop. I enjoyed it for sure, and I did enjoy it to some extent with Persona 5 as well. But I think that over time it definitely gets grating. I think that it becomes pretty repetitive, and especially in the case of Three Houses, where you're doing the same route, not the same route, but you're doing very similar things over and over again, especially kind of the beginning section of the game. I think that it's difficult to it's difficult for me to want to do that. So I've kind of held off on doing that. So, but I'm still a fan of the series. I did not play Engage. While I have heard that the combat is really well done, apparently the story takes quite the nosedive, and the hit. It seems that with the series, it's difficult to try to compromise both good combat and story, because I think Three Houses, I'm not someone who is super nitpicky about the map layout and that sort of thing. But I think that you could argue that some of the maps in Three Houses were maybe not as just not as maybe well designed as they could have been. So it's difficult to try to navigate both, a compelling story with characters, and then plus the gameplay as well. I mean, it's definitely possible. It's just maybe the intelligence systems has just had a difficult time trying to make that balance strike. So I'm not as interested, and I haven't been interested in really picking up Engage, because I've story is very important to me. Story is one of the biggest draws for me for, I mean, any type of genre of any medium, movies, television, right? I think that, and then games, it's just such a integral piece of what I take away from something. And I think that, there are, of course, I have my games where you know I don't concern myself with the story at all. But I think when it comes to games like JRPGs, RPGs in general, I really do find importance in how the story is structured and that sort of thing. So I think that sort of put me off, just hearing some comments and reviews about Engage as an overall product. This whole Fire Emblem ramble aside, I am very excited to. I'm hope the hope is that this game actually does get released, because I will be picking that up for sure. I haven't played Fire Emblem in a minute, in quite a while, so it would be good to kind of get back into that series, and hopefully this remake pops up again, heavily rumored. And I hope that it's something that's going to pop up as a potential, not it would just be a good surprise. I kind of anticipate it, but I just it's something where I think it would just be nice to see. Other stuff. Let's talk a bit of Metroid. So I'm not the biggest Metroid fan. I haven't really played a ton of the games. I've only really played Other M, which is considered one of the worst games in the series. I played that on the Wii. I never beat it. So I have not really delved into the series properly. I have been meaning to do so with the Metroid Prime remaster that came out was it last year? That came out last year, I believe. So that's still on my list of games that I want to play. I don't know if I'm gonna get to that anytime soon, but it's I've only heard great things about it. And then Metroid Dread, which I've heard is good as well. I struggle with like 2D side scrollers a little bit. It's hard to kind of have sort of like a I don't know. It's just kind of difficult for me. I kind of struggle with that. Really, Hollow Knight and Celeste, those are really the exceptions to that, just because of how good those games are and how well structured they are. But certain other 2D action titles, I'm just not particularly, I'm not very good at. So, but maybe I haven't really tried either. So maybe I have to kind of give those a fair shot. So so for this direct, because Prime 1 was remastered, it's sort of like, why shouldn't Prime 2 and 3 be remastered? And then that could potentially lead to having all three on the system. I think would be great. And then you could introduce Prime 4 for Switch 2 potentially, right? I've heard some people saying that Prime 4 was finally going to get some kind of update, but I'm not holding my breath. it's just been too long since they've said anything about this game. Since they announced it way back in 2017 and then restarted development in 2019. It's one of those things where I'm not even gonna hold my breath. Same thing with Silksong at this point, which is really it's frustrating. It really is. It's because they've announced it way back, way too early. And then it's been 2 years saying that within the next year, back in 2022, they were going to release this game on Xbox, and it was like day one on Game Pass, and that shit never happened. I don't know what the exact wording was, but they announced it, or not that announced it. They there was another sort of a trailer that came out, but it just wasn't. Nothing's come since, and it's really disappointing. It's just I'm just not even gonna bother. I'm not even gonna put any stock into it. It's not coming out this year, and it's really unfortunate. I feel I'm not the biggest Hollow Knight fan. But I do really like the game. It is, I do consider it to be one of my favorites for sure. Just overall, it's an incredible game. I do feel for fans that have invested a ton of time and just energy into just waiting and waiting and waiting for this game to come out, for Silksong to come out. So I think you just kind of need to let go. Unfortunately, it's just one of those things where you just sort of need to let go and just wait until it comes back up. And then when it comes back up, then we can kind of go crazy again. But yeah, other games kind of on the list where I feel like there could be some things that could come up. Some Zelda related thing, and I don't mean. Look, Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, it would be awesome to see those pop up, but I just don't know if that's going to happen. Because the sort of rule of thumb that I've seen is that there's been, since the Switch's release, there's been at least one Zelda-related game that's come out every year. Obviously the main titles with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, but also you had like Link's Awakening, you had Hyrule Warriors, you had, what else? You had, I mean, I mean, those are kind of the main ones, right? I don't know if there was some other ones that kind of in between, but like Hyrule Warriors, and then also the Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. So I think those kind of like sum up the majority of those. So if there was some minor Zelda related thing, that would be cool. Maybe a smaller game, maybe some kind of remake for the older handheld games in a similar vein to Link's Awakening. I think that would be pretty cool. I still haven't played Link's Awakening 2. See, there's so many games. There's always so many freaking games. I'm never gonna run out, which is a good thing, and also, it's a thing for sure. So yeah, maybe, I don't know. It'll be cool. It'll be cool to see some Zelda, this upcoming direct. Other ones, I'm trying to think. I had other remasters in mind, but I just can't think of it right now, because the ones that I've kind of mentioned are sort of the ones that that I would personally kind of want, and I think it would be cool to see. And also, it has been, rumored as well. So I don't know. There's a lot to kind of look into, and I'm hoping that I don't know, hoping something kind of pops up. I think kind of going back to Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, it just feels like it's been so long since this sort of discussion has happened, and I just don't. I don't know. If they get announced, that would be crazy, and that would be cool. But I'm not putting any stock into that. Another remake that I just sort of thought of. Well, I've been thinking of, but Xenoblade X. I don't think it's going to happen. But if it did, I think it would be awesome. And that would be one of those games that I would be picking up pretty quickly after release. So it would be awesome if it got ported. I've never played it. It's the one Xenoblade game that I haven't played because I don't have a Wii U, and I'm not willing to buy a Wii U simply to play Xenoblade X. So if it somehow gets ported, I would be very excited. And I don't think it's gonna happen though. That's very wishful. Yeah, I think that kind of covers the big ones. I'm really hoping that there is going to be a direct next week, because then I don't know. It just feels that all signs point to that, based on just the conversations that have been taken online. And then if it does happen next week, I'll be talking about how I'm feeling about it. It'll be good to just reflect and maybe see if I got any of these little predictions right. I guess a quick thing that I could talk about as well. I started playing Outer Wilds, and it's really exciting. It's really fun. There's the gameplay loop, pun intended, is very interesting. I like how you can kind of do. You have the freedom to do whatever. You can kind of follow along and sort of pick at the mystery little by little. I guess just to kind of give a brief overview without giving away too much of the game. It is a space exploration game, but you're also sort of uncovering a mystery. Multiple mysteries, and just sort of piecing together kind of the history of your world and sort of the galaxy and maybe the universe, and just kind of taking into account the artifacts and the clues and the sort of the glyphs left behind by a previous species, and then just sort of getting a better understanding of how things work and why things are the way they are. It's very interesting. It's cool. It is both this kind of I don't even know what to call it, but kind of sandbox sort of game where you're able to do a decent amount of things in terms of exploration and whatnot, and then on top of that it's also kind of this sort of mystery and kind of puzzle game as well. It's really cool. I'm not super familiar with this type of style of game. I mean, I'm sure that it is pretty unique in its own right. The only other game that I can kind of think that's maybe sort of close to this is Portal, but I know Portal is very different. Portal is very heavily focused on puzzle solving, and then I guess the only other sort of comparison and you can make is that it's also first person, but I'm struggling to think of another game that's sort of within this realm. It's very unique, and I haven't played anything quite like this, so it's cool. It's fun. It's been fun venturing into kind of these different styles of games that I'm not super familiar with. That I have, because most game, I've talked to, it's easy to mention again, but most of the games that I've played are RPGs and very sort of linear, mostly linear story focused games, while this one it has a, it has a story of sorts, but you as the player have more agency in uncovering it. You feel like you're kind of part of the world in that sense, and it's different. And I think that games like this, games like BioShock, it's not my preferred genre by any means. First person shooters or first person games, I sometimes feel I get a little kind of vertigo, if you want to call it that, playing these kinds of games. But I've grown accustomed to some of that, and I've gotten some really cool experiences from playing these games that I normally wouldn't have if I didn't decide to try to branch off. So it's good. I sort of like the setup that I'm having now, where I not split up, but in between some of the larger story games, I have something like this where it provides a completely different experience from what I have gotten used to before. So it's great, and you discover new games, you discover maybe some new favorite games as well. It's good stuff. It's really good stuff. So I'm excited to continue playing that. I'm probably going to play it a little bit more tonight. It's one of those things where I struggle to delve into detail because I don't really want to give away if someone also wants to play this, because a lot of the enjoyment you get out of it is from kind of these novel discoveries that you make on your own and not looking at guides or anything like that. The most common advice, or most common sort of referral, if you want to call it that, regarding this game, is that to not look up anything, is to just kind of go into it blind. And I've done that, and it's been a great experience so far. So I don't want to take that away from anyone else who might be interested. So yeah, quick catch up, mostly game related. Next week, again, if a direct does happen, I want to provide my thoughts on it. I'll probably be talking about it as soon as I can, just so I can provide my freshest sort of reactions post direct, and then I'll talk about anything else that pops up. If anything else, if I feel my thoughts after a week of playing Outer Wilds, any changes that I might feel, and anything else, whatever else is going on. If I have a random thought, I'll talk about it. Anyways, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you for listening, as always. This has been Save the Semantics, signing off.